Hello and welcome to NLP Metaprograms episode 21. Tonight we're coming live from Cyprus. We're in the second week of our NLP trainers training, now titled Trainers of Influence, and this is our training room. So we're here at the Almira Hotel in Paphos in Cyprus. It's gorgeous, fantastic weather today. So what I'm going to cover with you tonight is the remaining 3 metaprograms, which are really useful metaprograms when we're working around relationships, whether that be romantic relationships, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or business partner relationships. And they really create a deeper understanding as to what can actually create problems or conflict in both of those kind of relationships. So the first metaprogram is the information processing style. So again, the question that we ask to elicit this metaprogram is this: when you're faced with a major problem or challenge in your life, is it absolutely necessary for you to talk to someone else about it, or to go off by yourself and think about it by yourself only? So let's repeat that question again. When you're faced with a major problem or challenge in your life, is it absolutely necessary for you to talk about it with somebody else, or to go off by yourself and think about it by yourself only? The person who has to go off and think about it by themselves only is an internal processor. So, for instance, with an internal processor may actually know that they're not okay, but not even be able to verbalize at that particular point in time what specifically isn't okay. So they need to go off by themselves and process internally to even know what the problem is and then to resolve the problem. Whereas the external processor has to externalize the problem to somebody else to be able to resolve it. Both of these work well. They both enable the person to resolve the problem, resolve the challenge. Where it gets interesting is if you've got somebody who's an internal processor in a relationship with somebody who's an external processor. So what would happen is, if the person who's got an external processor metaprogram has a problem, they're going to go to their partner and say, look, I've got a problem, can I talk to you about it? They will then externalize, they'll literally be on transmit to their partner. In externalizing the problem, they'll actually work through the problem and come up with the solution and say, right, fantastic, got it, worked it out, thanks for your help. The internal processor is going, well, I didn't even get a chance to say anything, you know. If the internal processor has a problem, then they need to go off by themselves. But their partner, who's got the external information processing style metaprogram, will tend to do this to them. So, I can tell you're not okay. Sit down, let's talk about it. You'll feel a lot better when you've talked about it. But the internal processor might not even know what the problem is. No, come on, tell me all about it, come on, tell me. You'll feel a lot better when you tell me. So the person with the internal information processing style metaprogram will actually tell the person, the external processor, what that situation was in their life last time they knew, just to get the person with the external processor metaprogram off their back, to give them some space and some time to think. So they'll go, it's this. Yep. The person with the external processor information processing style metaprogram will say, you see, don't you feel a lot better now that you've actually told me and we've talked about it? Internal processor will go, yes, thank you, thanks very much, thanks for your help. And now will disappear off by themselves to process and discover what the problem is and also resolve it. Now, if we've got somebody who's got an internal information processing style with an external check frame of reference metaprogram, this person will go off by themselves They'll go internal, they'll work out what the problem is, and they'll come up with a solution. But because of their frame of reference metaprogram, what they're now going to want to do is they're going to want to check externally with probably their partner. They might have had a complete change in their thinking over this period of time. So they go, can I just have a chat with you? I've been thinking about what we talked about the other day. And they go, and this is where I'm at with it now. The person with the external information processing style metaprogram is going to go, listen, we only talked about this yesterday. Yesterday you said it was this. Now today you're saying it's this. What's going on? So this, when I work with couples and when I work with business partners where we've got somebody with an internal processing style in a relationship with somebody with an external processing style, and I give those two scenarios, quite often they're like, oh, this is exactly what it's like in our house. This is exactly what it's like in our business. So a lot of the thing with this isn't around resolving a problem, it's very much about education. What we find is that there is no gender bias to the processing style. It's about 50-50 across the population, but a lot of people say, well, men are internal processors and women are external processors. Not in my experience. I've been teaching these particular metaprograms probably for around about 19-20 years, and I've had a chance to check this out with probably a couple of thousand people. And I'll say, okay, so who here is an internal processor? Who here is an external processor? And there are as many women who are internal processors as men, and there are as many men who are external processors as women. Yeah. So then, the next metaprogram number 2, is the listening style, which again is either literal or inferential. So here's the question to elicit the listening style. If somebody that you knew quite well said to you, I'm cold, would you find that information interesting, but probably do nothing about it, or would you feel really compelled to do something about it? The literal listener will just take that information from their friend, from their partner, and go, okay, interesting, thanks for sharing. Whereas the inferential listener will infer that the reason why that person said that they're cold is that they want them to take action to turn the heating up or close the window or whatever it may be. So the challenge can be that an inferential listener may well take everything that their partner says as an instruction to do something, which might cause some conflict. Also, if you've got an inferential listener with unresolved stuff or unresolved baggage, the inferential listener will tend to read between the lines of what somebody else is saying, but read between the lines in a negative way. So again, this can cause challenges in a relationship if you've got somebody who's like a literal listening style and an inferential listening style in a relationship together. We could also look at this from a hypnosis point of view. The literal listener will tend to respond better to direct authoritarian hypnosis, like the hypnosis that we teach in our master hypnotist training, the hypnosis of George Estabrooks. Because they're going, why do you keep saying, I'm wondering if you can close your eyes? Of course I can close my eyes. If you want me to close my eyes, tell me to close my eyes. Whereas somebody who's an inferential listener will tend to find the direct authoritarian hypnosis a little bit jarring. So the inferential listener will probably tend to respond better to an indirect permissive form of hypnosis like Ericksonian hypnosis, which is one of the reasons why we teach both of those kinds of hypnosis in our master hypnotist training. And also the third form of hypnosis, Dave Ellman, which is a paradoxical approach, actually will work with both literal listeners and inferential listeners. The idea is that your listening style would be the same as your primary parent's speaking style, which is the next meta program. So primary parent being the parent that spent the most time with you. So my mum's was my primary parent, spent more time with me than my dad because my dad was at work. My mum is quite an inferential speaker, so I had to develop an inferential listening style to know what my mum wanted me to do. We'll look at speaking style next. NLP tends to have people become more of an inferential listener when we start to learn how to listen for linguistic presuppositions, and we're listening for the meaning or the structure behind the words. Then the third meta program is the speaking style. And here the question to elicit this is, if you needed to give somebody some uncomfortable feedback, would you just come straight to the point and tell them straight out, you didn't do a good job? Or would you tend to drop hints and clues, hoping that they would pick up that they hadn't done a good job? Again, just like with listening style, it's pretty much 50-50, 50% literal speakers, 50% inferential speakers. Listening style, 50% inferential, 50% literal. And again, in my experience from teaching this over the last 20 years, no gender bias. Where we can start to have some challenges is if we had, for instance, somebody who's an inferential speaker with somebody who was a literal listener. That can cause some misunderstandings. Equally, you can imagine what would happen if we had an inferential speaker in a relationship with somebody who was an inferential listener. So the speaker is dropping clues and hints, and the inferential listener is inferring all manner of different meanings around the particular conversation. This is something that, like on trainers training, that we need to be aware of when giving people feedback, because feedback really needs to be literal rather than inferential. So the inferential speaker is going to need to become more comfortable being very literal when giving feedback to a speaker, a presenter, or a trainer. But if the person receiving the feedback is an inferential listener, they may infer different things in the feedback they're given, which is why we use the modified feedback sandwich on the trainers training, which is around, this is what you did well, literal. This is what you can do next time to make it even better, literal. And then you say, okay, so what are you going to do next time to make it even better? Actually then means that the trainer, the coach on the trainers training knows whether the person integrated the feedback correctly or not. Again, learning NLP tends to have a literal speaker become more inferential. That's by learning the Milton model as an example, because the Milton model is an inferential communications model. So there we go. That's our 3 final metaprograms out of the Metaprogram series. I hope you found that really, really useful. There's more information about those metaprograms in the app, the I Am David Shepherd app, which I lovingly call the Netflix of NLP, available at davidshepherd.com. Also, if you've got any questions about these metaprograms, then please put them into the thread below the video, and I'll be happy to answer any of those questions for you. We will be coming back next week, next Thursday evening, with a new theme for our Facebook Lives. Have a great evening and have a great week until I see you next week. Bye for now.